So we're in the shop right now at Metal Tech, and we got a vehicle that needs a circuit added to it to run some off-road lights. So some vehicles have fog lights and stuff we can tap into and run the fog lights that are on bumpers already. In other situations, we're adding things like this 30-inch light bar that this vehicle has on the bumper that we've installed. So we have to install this wiring harness for the light. And this is universal. This is not just to this vehicle specific. So this happens to be a 2013 FJ Cruiser, but this installation guide is universal and you could use it on anything. So our quality light, this is an Outpost off-road combination light bar, came with a really nice wiring harness. And one of the key things that we know that we're really liking about a quality light harness is that this harness is not just a switch and a couple of wires to go to your battery, but this also includes a proper relay. And a relay is an important piece of equipment, and the reason for that is the relay is going to keep the high power or the strong amp load from the battery going to the light. It's going to keep that away from the switch. And all the switch does that's inside the cab, all the switch does is turn on and off the relay. And so essentially a relay is another switch. So we have a switch for a switch. And it sounds kind of funny to do that, but what we're doing is that we're keeping the heavy amp load or the draw to the light out of the cab and away from the switch that's going to be inside. So the switch doesn't have to handle the high load that the accessory has. So we have a relay that gets turned on by which takes a very low amp draw to turn the relay on. But when the relay turns on, it allows a high amp load to go through it. So we're going to be doing a couple of things. One, we're going to be taking this harness, and part of it goes to the light, of course, and then the other part is going inside the truck to the switch. And this part here, it came with a nice switch. This has a nice rocker switch in it, and this is a backlit rocker switch. And the advantage of this harnesses that have these are really easy to install because the harness, this switch is a nice diameter that's easy to drill out. Just use a standard step drill to be able to do this into your dash, and or wherever you're putting the switch. And then you're able to pop the switch right into that round hole you created, and you have a nice little rocker switch for it. So the other part of this relay, of course, is the part, or the harness, is the part that's going to go down to the light itself, and we'll be routing this to the light. And then I got the relay, which is going to need to be mounted to someplace on the body of the truck, and we'll do that under the hood here. And then, of course, we have our positive, negative power terminals, and these are going to carry the load for the light. And then, of course, the quality harness has a integrated fuse, and this has a built-in 20 amp fuse to run this light bar. So this is basically a really great setup, and so we're just going to show you the basic steps for putting this in. Now we're going to be doing something where we're just isolating the light. The customer for this vehicle wants to be able to turn the light on at any time and not happen to have the ignition on. And so we're going to be doing what's called a direct installation. So this is going to be completely isolated from the stock harness and running entirely on its own. So we're not going to be tapping into any other power source, and we're not going to be tapping into the dimmer switch for the lights or anything like that for the dash. We're going to be putting this as a direct installation. So we'll go ahead and get started and start locating some parts for putting this inside the truck. I got the location where I'm going to put the relay. I got a spot here. I just did a locating hit to put that on there, and I'll shoot it in with the self-drilling tapping screw here in a moment. So I got the part of the relay assembly that's going to be going to the Firewall, which is this here. So I'm going to start kind of snaking this forward to where it needs to be, which is near the Firewall. And I'm just tucking it along underneath the stuff as I go. And then I'll pull that on through. And then this is going to be getting routed up to the Firewall. And then I will do something similar to the front part, but this portion can go ahead and sit there. And then now this front part has my two leads for the battery terminals, and of course my lead that's going to go forward to the lights themselves. So this is going to come underneath, tuck this in, make sure that these lead connections are where I can get to them. I'm gonna hook them right on that for now. And bring this in place, and then go ahead and shoot the self-telling drilling tapper in to this spot on the body. Now, one of the key things on this truck is I didn't put it right on top of one of these little dimple parts. And the reason for that is those dimple parts are actually part of the crush zone of the vehicle. And this happens to be an FJ Cruiser, and they're notorious for those portions or those areas having some problems. So I'm not going to add a screw right on top of one of them. So I got to actually split right between two of them. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. And it just takes a second to tuck that baby in there. Got a relay right where it needs to be. So one of our key parts that we're trying to do on any installation is to make things look like it's factory. And so if it looks like factory, then that's what we want. So we have this tucked in here right by all the other wiring that's in the area. And then our secondary wiring here that we're putting in, I got my ring terminal that's going to go for ground, and I got the actual positive I'm going to be hooking up here. I'm going to leave those disconnected for right now because we're going to want to route the wiring first and get the switch set up before we start making things go live. We're going to do that so we don't have any severing of any wires in the process and having a hot lead that we're having a problem with. So we'll go ahead and leave these open for now as we continue putting the switch in now at this point. So we're going to hook the ground up, so that's already ready to go. We're using one of the factory grounds that's already in here on the truck. So I'm going to slip the large ring terminal behind the ground, run the bolt through, and put the ground right back where it was before. Now we have a really nice and neat, super clean ground. That's the same ground that's grounding the entire computer assembly for this front hood mount, under hood mounted fuse box. That same ground is on there. The next question comes, how do we get our wire from our relay inside the cab of the truck? And so one of the things we're going to do is this particular harness has this large fitting on it. So normally you'd have to come up with a hole big enough for that thing to go through. The other thing you can do is you can use a small screwdriver and relieve those clips inside there and pull this connector completely off and save those ends that you can re-put them back in the connector. In our particular case, I actually have a factory Toyota fog light switch that I'm going to be installing for this customer. So I'm actually not going to be using the great little rocker switch this kit came with. It came with this nice little switch, but I'm actually going to not be using that. I'm going to be using an actual Toyota one under the hood or inside the engine compartment. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and cut these wires free because I'm going to be using the dedicated wires that are on the factory Toyota switch in this particular case. But for anybody, as far as how you wire these, you would just run this through the Firewall and then locate where your switch is going to be. So now, where do we go through the Firewall? It's always one of the biggest questions. Well, when you look closely at the Firewall, you'll find that there's these rubber grommets that the factory harnesses go through or factory wires go through. And there's one down here. There's a great big one that's right down here. And one of the things you'll notice is that it has this little nub sticking out on it right there. This little nub right there. And if you look down below, you'll see this guide wire that's going through right here. This is a temperature sensor wire that's going through. That's what this is for. This is for another guide wire to go through. So we can actually cut this off, and there's a little tube that's going to go between there. This truck happens to have that. Not all of them do. And so when your vehicle doesn't have them, what I like to do is that you can feel very carefully with your finger, you can feel the hard firewall and where that bellows is. And that bellows is really big. The holes are a lot bigger than what you see. And so you can actually carefully cut a small hole in that rubber grommet and push the wire through to the other side. Now, most of these are double grommeted, so there's a grommet on the other side too. So be aware of that when you make your little incision in the grommet, an easy thing to do is take a small screwdriver and push it through the other side, making sure you're not getting any wires in the process. So you're just going to, just through the rubber, and poke to the other side, and then if you get to the inside of the truck, you're going to see where it's coming through, make a small incision, and now you have a place to be able to pass your wire through. You're going to see when we get completely done with this and we have everything where it needs to be, we're going to come back and put a little bit of black RTV sealant in that area to make sure any water does not travel along the wire and go inside the vehicle. We don't want to get any water inside the vehicle. So if we have to make any incisions, we're definitely going to be putting our TV on it. In this case, I'm going to use that little port that's already there, and then we're going to go ahead and go through that area. All right, so I'm pulling the wire back through at this point, and I'm going to bring all of it into the inside of the passenger compartment. I'll adjust it on the outside to make sure it's set up correctly, but I got plenty of space for this wire. And I'm going to be going to, this vehicle has a knockout right here next to the steering column, which the headlights are controlled here. So we're going to put our off-road light right here. And this is a knockout, meaning that it actually knocks out. So the way that you knock those out is that you just reach in from behind. In this particular case, I'm going to pull the fuse panel, reach up inside here, and the actual knockout itself pops right out. Just knocks right out. And it's a dummy switch, doesn't look like a switch. Now, if I didn't have the factory switch that goes in that exact same spot, I would take this and I would go ahead and drill it and put that aftermarket switch on there and then carefully pop it back in again. It's super nice to be able to do that outside the vehicle. If you have to drill in your vehicle though, let's say that you're going to put switches right here on this panel here, you'd want to make sure you cover the whole area in tape before you drill, so you don't get any swarf swirling around and scratching the outside of the plastic. Plastic scratches so easily. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and put in our aftermarket light switch. So I got to route our wire up to that point, and it's going to be right down in here. So I'm going to route that wire right now. I'm going to pass this through. So, factory Toyota switch, factory Toyota harness piece. I happen to know how the wiring works. The cool thing is the colors are actually the same. So red is our positive, black is our obvious negative, and then yellow is our switched power. So I'm going to be running these two reds together into that one connector. So as I do this, I am using obviously crimp connectors. And there's a mixed argument out there as far as using crimp connectors or soldering and heat shrinking. Soldering and heat shrinking, of course, works really well and it looks great. But the solderless connectors, these crimp connectors, a lot of times are used in high vibration areas like on aircraft and stuff for a reason of vibration can't crack and break a solder. So if these wires are connected with a crimp connector, these have the ability to vibrate a little bit and be able to still stay together and not come apart. So that's why we're using the crimp connectors in this case. There we go. We have our connections made. I'm going to go ahead and put a bit of electrical tape on this to hold these together. I have confirmed we have good solid connections, but I'm going to go ahead and put some electrical tape on that to protect them a little bit, hold them together. And then we're going to hook our light up, and then we'll run a quick test once we hook the lead up. We're going to test our switch. So I'm going to go ahead and connect our positive connection at this point. We're ready to test our switch. We want to test everything before we tuck everything and put everything away. So we're going to go ahead and connect our positive and see what we got. And I need a different socket. So I'm going to come on here and take this positive off. Being very careful as I do that because I do have the ground still on. And you can always short out through your wrench.
I would say I like to do little circles. I know Luis likes to go back and forth. I prefer little circles to get a little more of that dime stack effect. That's just what I do.
There we go.
Dime effect, how it wraps.
So we're going to route the wire now, just using natural holes that are in the front of the truck here to route the wire through. All right, there we go. So it's coming through here. So we're going to put the light in now at this point. So nice factory looking. Lights up when the ignition's on. The ignition's on right now for our testing. So that's good to go, nice and clean.